You know, I know that all of you were glued to your television screens in the last few days because of all the different events that are going on in the news. One of those events deals with the BTK killer. The man from Kansas who dubbed himself the BTK killer, meaning bind, torture, kill, who's been convicted of killing 10 human beings. I remember watching the proceedings as he was being sentenced, as he confessed to his crimes. I remember listening to some of these the families of some of these victims and the things that they were saying. I remember logging on to CNN.com and seeing the heading. It said, "Families to the BTK killer." Their message to him was, "Rot in hell." I remember hearing one man saying how he wished that he could develop some disease and slowly suffer and choke on his own vomit and die that way. And just hearing all the things, people calling him just cesspool and human, human waste and just all these things. I just thought of that and I thought, man, look at that. These people want him to suffer. That human sense of justice for the things that he had done. And I thought of that, and then I thought about how oftentimes we as people, when we speak about God, we just talk about him as being one who'll just overlook the things that people have done. How he'll just kind of forget about it and pass it over. And I thought, can you imagine if that judge yesterday in that courtroom looked at that man and said, you know what, I know you've done all these things, but I'm a caring, loving, forgiving judge, and I'm just going to let you go today. Can you imagine the horror that would have overtaken all of America and the world? Because we have a sense of justice. But it's amazing that when we look at ourselves in light of God, we think that he should just overlook all that we've done. God is a God of justice. See, the problem is that we compare ourselves to someone like the BTK killer and we don't look so bad. We compare ourselves to someone like Hitler and we don't look so bad. But friends, on the day of judgment, God is going to compare us to his own standard of righteousness. As my friend said, his commandments, and when we compare ourselves to that, then we see ourselves in the true light and we realize why we deserve God's wrath and judgment. Because we've broken his commandments. You see, if you see a white sheep eating green grass, it doesn't look so bad. It looks so white and pure. But you take it in a barn, let it snow overnight, bring it out, and you look at this sheep now with this freshly fallen, pure white, snowy background, and it doesn't look so white anymore. When we compare ourselves to God's holiness, we see ourselves in our true light. If we've lied, by his standard, we're liars. If we've looked with lust, we're adulterers. The Bible says if we've had unjust anger or hatred towards anyone in our heart, we're guilty of murder. And by that standard, suddenly we see ourselves deserving of God's judgment. And to think otherwise would be an insult to God. And that's why we need to recognize today our need for God's forgiveness. You see, there are degrees of justice and judgment. If I come up to you today and I run towards you, and your friends are with you and they pull out Uzis and spray me and kill me, you'd be in big trouble. But you see, if you do the same thing to the President of the United States, that's justice because of his rank. We've sinned against a holy God. We deserve hell. We need his forgiveness. So I urge you to place your faith in the death and resurrection of Christ today and receive God's grace and forgiveness. Thank you so much for your attention.